Second here. Mr. Gross is joining us, but we are live on YouTube and we are recording chair, just a heads up.
Perfect.
And then with your permission, Chair, I guess you can call the order and then I can
Yep,
pass along the request from the contractor.
that would be great. Are we good to go?
Yep, good to go.
All right. Hello, everybody, and we can get started with our meeting. I know that Thomas, you had a request from somebody. Do you want to bring us up to date on that?
Certainly. Thank you, Chair. In this case, we had one of the contractors that submitted a proposal, Leak Stoppers Roofing. I think they should be on the call tonight. We do have one call in, and they wanted to speak and answer any questions on their proposal, but they do have a hard cutoff at 6, so they had requested that the agenda potentially be arranged after public comment to discuss the municipal leak repair versus going through the rest of the agenda, or at least just if there's any questions to open up discussion and questions for them, but it would request a motion. It would require a motion to reorganize the agenda. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Bruce.
Do we need to do a roll call just to be official?
Yep.
Okay, I'm here.
Chair Marshall,
Present.
Councilmember Bros,
Here.
Councilmember Edens, Councilmember Nyan,
Here.
Councilmember Farmer.
Here.
All right. So before we change the agenda, everybody has the minutes. I had a question about the minutes. If you look at the second page, and the adjournment was made by Councilmember Dodwell, but she was not listed in the front of the meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Are we okay with approving them that way?
In this case, with what City Attorney Young had said, is that since it was accepted at the time of the meeting, then it would be fine as long as it was okay at the time. And in that case, no one had objected. And in this case, it still would be considered valid. And she did record the actual motion, if you will.
Okay.
So it would not have any issue since it is already said and done.
But she doesn't need to be listed as being present for the meeting.
That's correct.
Okay. That was my question. So I guess if everybody's had a chance to look at the minutes from the February 15th meeting, do we have a motion to accept them as presented?
I'll make
Mr.
it.
Mr. Farmer makes the motion and Ms. Nyland second the motion. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion to approve the minutes has passed. Now we need a motion to change the agenda, the order of the agenda, to bring the actual, and I'm hoping I'm right with this, Thomas. You want the ad hoc committee meeting on leak repairs brought up for the first discussion in front of the ad hoc on the geotech report.
That's correct, Chair. And just as another reminder too, we have not technically done public comment. So if it's the committee can act tonight to allow the contractors to speak during the item on the floor, or they could speak during public comment. So that'll be up to the committee on which way we'd like to go on this piece.
Well, so if we make a motion to move the agenda, then we could go back to public participation, or do you want to go through?
That is correct. And in this case, I guess the other option, I did not consider this at first. We could theoretically have the public comment and then have that discourse during public comment as well.
Whichever is the easiest, that's fine.
I would say I see them on the call. I would say we could just proceed with public comment and let them proceed with speaking, and we
That
could have
sounds,
the rest.
that sounds workable. Go for it.
Okay. All right, we're gonna go ahead and allow well, if you want to speak with Leak Stoppers Roofings, I see you on the call here. If you could just raise your hand, use the raise hand feature. All right, I'm gonna promote you to talk at this moment. You should have that permission now if you can hear me.
Yes. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Could you state your name and ward, Mr. Donahue?
Sure,
Oh,
I'm Josh.
name and address.
You're good. I'm Josh Donahue, and I'm the president and owner of Leak Stoppers Roofing.
Did you have anything you wanted to
I'm in.
add, Donahue, or I guess we could, Chair, if you want to turn it over for questions?
Yeah, I'm not sure if you wanted to make a comment first or,
Ultimately, I'm just here to answer, any questions that you might have. We've kind of looked over I know you guys have been having this ongoing issue for quite some time. So ultimately, whatever questions you have for me, I can hopefully get them answered.
okay, any questions anyone has now before we actually go through it? All right. So Thomas, if you'd like to go through, I guess we can leave it in that order and we can do that item first, the leak repairs. We'll
In
have-
this case, Chair, could we go ahead and close, I would say, could we ask for any other public comment real quick so we could close out the public comments?
Absolutely. I wasn't aware there were any others.
We have two others real quick. If you, and there's no raised hand at this moment. If you plan to speak at tonight's meeting, if you could please use the raise hand feature, we can go ahead and promote you to speak, and then we could go from there. If you would like to speak, please use the raise hand feature. Okay, Chair, we do have one other speaker here. 1 second. Okay, Mr. White, you are available to speak.
Steve White from Stat Tuck Pointing. Also Joe Stab with Stat Tuck Pointing. And we're also basically on the call for any questions. We're part of helping resolve any water infiltration issues that you have, and we walked the project, had bid documents and bid them accordingly, and came up with scope of work. So that's what the documents we bid from.
Okay.
All right, and then real quick, Chair, with your permission, we have one other caller on. If you would like to speak, if you wouldn't mind, I will see that you're calling in, so I don't know if the raise hand feature is available to you. I will allow you to speak just in case. I'm assuming this is the other contractor as well. 1 second here. Brent, I'm assuming that might be you. You can speak now if you unmute yourself. Okay. All right, in this case, Chair, I don't think there's any other public comment.
Okay, then we can close public comment and we can move on then to, per the request, we'll do the leak repair first.
Chair, would you mind getting a motion and a second for the reorganizing the agenda?
Sure. Mr. Farmer makes the motion and do we have it? And Mr. Bruce seconds the motion to change the agenda to allow us to read the leak repair proposal first. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion's carried. We're good to start with it now, Mr. Lee.
Thank you, Chair Marshall. In this case, wanted to go over quickly. We went out to bid back in late April, and we received, before that, we had received initial quote estimates from both Leak Stoppers Roofing and Stat, and under coordination from the Garland Company, Inc. And they use, typically with the Garland Company, they help organize this and provide a product, a sealant product, I believe, and a couple others that would be used in the actual project itself. But we went out to bid since the numbers did exceed the purchasing power of the city administrator over 10. And in this case, we received 2 quotes. The proposals that were received were 2 specific leaks, one being the clock tower leak and the police station leak, the masonry work associated with doing both of those. And then the other had to do with adding guttering to the back dormer that is causing the second floor kitchen leak, and then the front dormer that has leaked in the past but has not had as many issues more recently. In this case, both proposals would kind of come together to create a one solution for all three leaks. So the department has gone through these, and what it involves for the police station leak is going in, doing some masonry work and adding some new sealant. And on the clock tower leak, they would be doing something very similar. They'd be going in with some masonry work and adding in some sealant. That would be under Stat Inc. They are a firm that has worked with Stat, Leak Stoppers, and the Garland Company have worked on numerous projects with, and how the city had heard of them originally was through Rockwood School District. They have repaired multiple buildings throughout the school district and have done a good job and come with a pretty favorable recommendation from their from that school district. In this case, the last piece of it would be Leak Stoppers coming in and providing guttering for both dormers. And if you don't mind, Chair, I can share my
Please.
screen to kind of show a layout of these 4 distinct areas that have leaked in the past and 3 that are currently leaking. 1 second here. And can you all see my screen?
We can.
Okay.
Yes.
In this case, thank you, Chair. So you can see the clock tower obviously here. This corner is what is precipitating the leak. When you get rainfall on the second floor here, you will see a buildup of water. The front dormer is not currently leaking, but we have experienced some issues. This is right over the Planning and Parks Department, and we have had some leaks through the roof there. And it has the 2 dormers here, just to point out, half of the actual dormer itself is made up of some type of plexiglass material that has an older sealant that we believe could be causing a little bit of the leakage. But then the other section of it actually has to do with the air intake for our air handlers here on the second floor. We do believe that those do not close automatically when they're not taking air there. So that being open at all times and water pooling here, there is no guttering currently on these 2 dormers. So water, when it rains, pools on the top here and slowly drips off the side. And if you're pulling in air from the air handler and you have a pretty wide gap, it should, I mean, just based off the physics and some wind, will probably pull some of that water in, along with also having some sealant that is most likely degraded over time for the windows. So in this case, what the goal for Leak Stoppers Roofing, and they can elaborate more since they are on the call with us, they would be adding copper guttering to the front portion of both the dormers here, and then doing some sealant work on these 2 areas as well, along with adding some sealant work and some guttering to the clock tower here to help direct water flow away from the vulnerable areas. On top of that, they would do some work on the roof, but really the main component is adding guttering, copper guttering, to these 2 areas, along with a little bit here to drive some water away from the clock tower. This would, the copper guttering material that we use for our for the rest of the building, you can see here it has guttering along the front and the back and the sides. It did not look like that automatically. It took a couple of years, about a year or so, for it to turn the dark grayish material that it currently is today, the little brownish material. So it would look a little off-putting, if you will, at first, but in the long term, it would be identical to the rest of the guttering and would serve as a better long-term solution, since we want to make sure we are using the same type of materials for all of the guttering here at City Hall. So these 2 areas would be the primary point of focus, and it would need to go to the Architectural Review Board, just since it would be changing the overall outside design of the building. That being said, this is kind of perceived as a first step of the solution, just because there could be some additional work that is needed. But overall, if we can drive some of the water, and the department can speak from experience after watching in the rain, water does just flow off the side here, and it should have guttering. The main piece to consider here is that this is a kind of an initial step. And if it was if it didn't work after we added the guttering, then we could look at an additional investigation to figure out what's going on there. But the sealant would go around the dormer and through the guttering here. That cost for the, one second, I'll stop sharing here. The cost for that is around 20,000 for the guttering to be added, and it's around 20,000 to get the specific numbers. 1 second. The guttering here is 20,000 for the guttering, and then 20,000, around 20,000 with Stat Inc. for both the police station leak masonry work and the clock tower leak masonry work.
So was there any discussion about why it wasn't done right the first time?
So in this case, we did not see, and Rick, correct me if I'm wrong, was there guttering proposed on the initial plans back when the building was built back in 2013?
Pardon me. Well, I was not around in 2013 or the lead up to the building construction, so I don't really know. So I really can't comment on that.
Okay.
Maybe we could ask one of the individuals, I think it's Mr. Donahue, would that have been normal to put that type of vent in, if you would, for the air and that, and not have the proper guttering in order to do that, number one. And then number two, I'm assuming that the interior damage from the wood and the drywall and all that will have to be corrected once the exterior part gets corrected. Is that a true assumption?
Yes, and in my experience, we do see a lot of penthouses, so to speak, you know, the roofs on top of roofs where they don't have the guttering. It is designed to run over the wall and drip out. Unfortunately for you guys, it seems to be that this is an issue. Why I do not know, but I guess just the way that it's designed or where those louvers are, it's somehow getting in and causing an issue for you. So it's not uncommon to see something like this to not have gutters, but obviously gutters are going to significantly help you know, any rain that's coming down and swooping over, you know, collecting a significant amount of water. Second, to answer your second question, ultimately structurally it's probably still okay. You would have to view that from the inside, make sure there's no extreme rot with that, considering that it's dripping out and it doesn't seem like it's been going on for, you know, 5 or 6 years. It seems like it's just been a problem for maybe the past year or so. The only thing I would be concerned about is just checking for any potential mold, mildew, getting that sprayed out and getting it out of your building. And then I did have one other quick question, Thomas, and I hope that this doesn't ruin anything. Whenever we were doing the scope of work or pre-walkthrough, that front, I guess technically the front dormer, we were looking at we're pulled around that back lot in a sense. And the dormers that I had looked at was the one to the left that was over the kitchen area, and then that small one kind of over the front entrance. I didn't know at that time that we were having any issues, I guess technically on the front of the building. I know you had that outlined.
With your permission, Chair.
Sure.
In this case, are you speaking of that small one glass pane window that's on the front end of the building?
Correct. Yeah, because that's what we had looked at the day we were there. We didn't really look at that back area. So
I know we'd walked through all 3 areas, but in that case, that just to clarify everyone, that means that front dormer would that's on the front side of City Hall would not, and he's thinking that the back side of City Hall is the front, but the
Correct.
front dormer would not be included in the scope of the current proposal. It would only be the back dormer, and then there's also a roof on top of a roof, if you will, over the back entrance of City Hall that has one pane glass window. That hasn't had too many leaks or anything along those lines, but it seems to have the same kind of setup, and it is facing the same area, so it would look a little strange if you did guttering on one and not the other. But this would not include the guttering for the front dormer, which currently is not leaking, but has leaked in the past.
I just wanted to make sure I was not confused, and that was part of the scope of work. I just wanted to make sure on my end I didn't make a mistake. So.
Mr. Brose, do you have a question?
Yeah, I guess my question is, what's the cost difference between copper and regular guttering?
It is, if you're, well, make sure you're talking to me, it would be significantly cheaper to go with a aluminum guttering. and we could get a color match to help blend in to what you have, and that would lower the cost very significantly. I believe at the time there was a concern about the copper and the aluminum kind of touching and having that. I always forget the word, but the copper will eventually deteriorate the aluminum over time. Like I said, I can't think of. I have to maybe look it up, but over time the copper will deteriorate and ruin the aluminum guttering.
Where would the two be touching?
So technically your aluminum guttering, if you were to go that route, would be screwing into and touching the face of the dormer, which is all currently copper. So, I mean, it would change things if you wanted to go aluminum route. We could add some sort of board to help keep those two from touching, but that would kind of change things up a little bit.
Yeah, and I guess this was sort of a general comment that I have, but this is a good example, is that, you know, when I was operating my construction company, I always, when I met with a customer, I always focused on what the function that they wanted. And we have a function that we're discussing here. We want to divert water. And then you get down to, well, to achieve a function, there's a wide range of cost. You know, like you can drive a Ford, you can get to the store. You can drive a Porsche, you can get to the store. So you got to decide which one you want. I would say if we went with aluminum gutters, the only person that would know it would be people that made the decision. So I think we need to solve the problem. But I think a number of the problems that we have with this office building is that we might have focused on our function of what we were trying to accomplish with this building, but I think we drifted when it came to how to accomplish the function, such as copper gutters. Did we really need to spend the money to put in copper? And if I was back then, I'd be like, oh my gosh, it's stupid expensive. So I would still sit here today and say, it's stupid expensive to put copper in. We have a building that needs a lot of work because I think we got too much into the aesthetics and we got away from the function of what we were trying to accomplish. So that's a long-winded answer to say, I would say, let's just go with regular aluminum. I mean, we've got way too much money in this building already, and we will accomplish the function at a much lower cost. And Joe, I'm going to vote that we take the savings and put it toward erosion. So, all right, thank you.
Mr. Farmer.
Yeah, I was going to say, I agree with you, Larry, on that. I think the reason we did this when we went with the bid, and this probably falls back to you, is because we have copper already. I think we are required to match what's there, but at the end of the day, I don't know how much guttering we have. It may be worth just taking all that copper off and selling it for scrap and putting that towards watershed too. Who knows? But I'm with you. I mean, it's crazy. The copper thing is nuts.
Yeah, and I don't think it needs to match. You know, when I built my home, I did it with mine of showing customers, and I trimmed out different bedrooms differently. Some at a high cost, some at a low cost. Never was noticed. So spend money wisely. Do we need, if it's 10 grand or whatever it is, do we really need to spend 10 grand extra when we're gaining no functional benefit? And that's just, it's like, you go buy a city truck, you can get a mid-grade package or you can get the platinum. The function's the same, it just costs more. So but I'm a poor person, so I have to think that way. All right, thanks.
So
And
I had one other question too, then, is because we're talking the different dormers and Thomas, you were showing us the one in the back. Do we need to repair that one as well? I mean, if it had been leaking before, wouldn't we be kind of foolish not to get it corrected now?
Yes, the department would recommend addressing that dormer as well, and I'll go ahead and share my screen real quick to show the discrepancy. And in this case, it had leaked in the past and we had a new sealant applied to it. So this is the back dormer that is leaking currently. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the back dormer that's leaking currently. He was referring to this dormer that said City Hall entrance, obviously thinking entrance was thinking here, but since he had entered this area, that's what the confusion came from. So guttering would be applied here and here. This is the front dormer that would not be included in the current scope. And this has leaked in the past and just got a fresh covering of sealant that has helped get it helped make it so it's not leaking. But we've had some leaks in the past there.
So should that one have guttering put on it?
In this case, the department would recommend yes, because I think we would have this issue down the road where we would be going back out to do a similar type of project. Because eventually that, just like with the back dormer and what had happened previously with that front dormer, is the sealant will erode over time and then water will come in as a result.
Good. Any other comments? Tracy, Joe, any more? Larry, would you like to make a motion?
Well, I guess I'd like some comment back, Tom, from you or the contractor, but do we really need to spend the extra money on copper? Can you make an argument for it? I haven't heard one tonight.
The one thing, with your permission, Chair, the one item I would mention, I would have to double check the town center development manual, but I am thinking that we have the masonry work is just replacing what is currently there. So that would not be subject to our architecture review board and the guidelines that manage here in town center. That would just be able to carry out after approval from the city council on the agreement. But the adding of guttering to the building would be an architectural change. So that would have to go to the revised architecture review board. And there could be a chance where that would potentially be under some intense scrutiny because it's a different material. And the department had to check back on the design manual for town center to see if you can have two different kinds. That would be the one item that would be a little concerning. But other than that, it would be more so, do we allow other buildings here in town center to use two different types of materials would be the only question. If not, then I think it would be appropriate to have two different options, one being what we have currently, and then having the kind of like an alternate to do it with aluminum.
Well, I'll carry that torch to the ARB because we need to be fiscally responsible, and this is just the tip of the iceberg here for that building. So I think, I guess if I'll make a motion, if that's okay, that we accept the proposal amended for aluminum guttering.
And then I think one of the other comments there would be the fact that I think it's important that as we take that to the council, we explain to the council how much different the cost is because of our architecture review board. Because I think that's just one more issue where we keep putting stuff out there and want to know why people can't develop or do that. And this is a good example where it's our own cost that we're dealing with. So I think having that cost to know exactly if that's what it says, then we need to make the decision. But I also agree that for something that's not even there now, and we ended up getting damage, it seems a little bit sarcastic to turn around and have to say now we have to put copper in for an additional $20-some thousand that it didn't have to do it the first time. So Tracy.
I just had a question. Could we amend that proposal and say, do it in aluminum, but some of those savings go towards doing the dormer in the front? And also, if they're putting a piece of wood between to keep from discoloration, is there a chance that wood is going to rot? Or is that the best thing to put between there? Or will that be a concern in the future?
You can do a material that's not going to decay.
Okay.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be wood.
Okay.
I'm might be speaking out of turn here. I'm the council member, not the contractor.
I was gonna say, originally when we did meet to look at the project, I forget when it was, but it was well before the pre-bid that we were assigned to. We had originally talked about going with going with aluminum gutters, just for the simple fact of it would blend better with the current color of the copper that's turned to brown now, and also cost would be significantly cheaper. So that's something that definitely can be looked at. But we were requested to go with copper guttering. I guess maybe there was another meeting, and that's where it turned into. So it's definitely not an issue whatsoever. We would have to go out, kind of readdress it, and come up with a new game plan. And what Tracy suggested too is that savings that could potentially go to that front dormer. But I would have to maybe come back out, relook at it, make sure I've got everything down to a T, get you a new estimate or proposal, and also get a gutter sample color to you. That way that can be decided as well. So absolutely, yes, aluminum can be an option. We would just have to readdress the situation.
That sounds great. So we need a second for the motion. Mr. Farmer seconds the motion. Any other discussion?
Mr. Farmer, Chair Farmer, with your permission, could we, just to clarify on the motion, it's to proceed with their proposal with two different options, the copper, and then having a different option showing the aluminum, taking up that option. And then do we want to have a component in there for the front dormer for the front of City Hall, or do we want to maybe have that as another alternate to add that work so we know what the total cost would be?
Larry, if I may, I might suggest, Tom, getting a bid for the aluminum everywhere gutter. And then, Larry, at the end of the day, is going to get to have this conversation anyways at, with the ARB or whoever it is, I assume, right, Larry? I mean, that's going to be you.
If they make an objection to it, I want to just put like we've got to be fiscally responsible with the taxpayers' money.
Yeah. So, I mean, if it's easier to get two bids of the entire, I think you bid the entire job in aluminum, if it makes sense to say, also, here's what it would be in copper. But I think anybody can understand that it's prohibitively more expensive in copper than it would be in aluminum. And, as our contractor said, like from an aesthetic standpoint, which to me is really the only argument somebody can make, it's going to look like what it is there now. It never should have been copper in the first place. I mean, that's just ridiculous.
Right. It was ridiculous.
So does that help, Tom? Like I would just get the full bid for everything, all the dormers, all of that, and aluminum. And we can speak to, if it makes more sense, just speak to the fact that like copper is however much more per square foot. That makes that number pretty easy to figure out.
And in that case, does everyone agree with Mr. Farmer's notion there, where we would bring forth to the full council the agreement that you see for copper everywhere, but we obviously the cost would be, there would be cost added because we would be adding a full dormer there, and then the same exact bid, but for aluminum everywhere as well. So both dormers and then that back window.
I think that's great. Tracy agree? So all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? None opposed, so the motion carries. And Thomas, do you have enough for what you need from us?
Yep, on that one, we sure do.
And hopefully we're not torturing these kind folks that joined us tonight.
No, not at all. This is our job. We try to take care of you guys, so it's not a problem.
And thank you for joining us. We know you needed to leave.
No problem. I appreciate your patience with us, and I will get out there hopefully next week, and we'll get the estimate to you as quickly as possible.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, folks. Have a great night.
You too. All right, so we're finished then with the leak repair. We could go back up now to the geotech study.
All right. And I'm going to allow Rick, if you have anything to add after I'm done, feel free. But going through here, we have had geotechnology. The council approved a geotechnical study to be conducted here at City Hall earlier this year. That included crack monitors being added to multiple locations within City Hall, and then those being checked every other month for approximately 6 months to a year. Those were installed back in early April, mid-April. And then slab coring to be conducted in that would pretty much go in and take soil samples underneath the foundation here on the first floor. One was taken in the community room, and then one was taken in the back janitor's closet on the first floor. Luckily, we were able to move around the original location, which was in the kitchen, which would have destroyed the tiling that we have back there, and that was completed not too long ago as well. They have those samples. The rain garden exploration, which was included as well, which had 4 test pits dug out on the rain garden on the back end of City Hall, so that south side of City Hall. And in this case, it went around 8 to 10 feet back there, and they did note, and this is the most significant finding to date, that there is no, on the back end of City Hall, up against the foundation, there is no drainage, and there was supposed to be drainage based off the original construction drawing. So though that is absent and could be leading to water sitting in that back rain garden, which could explain quite a bit, especially since we've had leaking in that back room and on the back side of the building on the first floor. The other portion of it is the piezometer being installed on the westernmost portion of the building, and that was installed back in April as well. And typically they need about 6 months to a year to record the pressure of the water that is going underneath and up against the building's foundation. So as of now, all the actual study, except taking recordings from the piezometer, but also the crack monitors here at City Hall, everything's been done. So we're in a good shape there. That being said, Geotechnology has asked, they believe it would be beneficial to have a full year of study. So it would be around April or March of next year, or we could go out and ask them to conduct the sampling and wrap it up in 6 months. But with the cost associated here, we may get more bang for our buck as a city, allowing them to do their full scope for a year and then coming back with that finalized report. So that's one piece. And then the other structural repair that was conducted more recently was done by T. Hill. The back staircase, and as the committee members here had all witnessed during the tour last year of the building, kind of showing the trouble areas, the stairs had sunk about 2 inches, about an inch or two below what it was at grade and in 2013. And in this case, we had a belief that water being pooled around that staircase and erosion underneath was blowing out some of the rock that was keeping it stable. And in this case, we were able to have a contractor. We weren't able to do the mud jacking that was at first proposed, where we would have lifted the staircase upwards and allowed it to be in its original location. But what we were able to do was add some drainage to the current staircase and then remove the concrete slab that was adjacent to it and that was at a different grade, and it caused a trip hazard. We were able to remove that and put in a new slab at that juncture, and now it looks pretty nice. So that's good, and we were able to add some concrete underneath the staircase as well to add some additional foundational support. That came in at $7,800, and it's already been done. So good shape there. Staircase should be good for a decent amount of time, along with the drainage being on the side. The water now should run away from that staircase instead of going underneath and washing out the rock. We had some instances back in July where we had a ton of water from the rain and came in and actually knocked out a lot of you would see small rocks at the base of the staircase. So that definitely played a role in sinking the staircase overall. This is really just for information tonight, but if the committee wanted to provide direction on the timetable, right now it's looking like March, April would be that full year of study, but we also could opt to have a shorter time period, which could impact the data being recovered. In this case, we would be expecting some type of preliminary report based off the findings, just leaving out the piezometer information samples and the impact of the absence of the drainage at the footing of the back foundation wall. The problem is, and Rick, please feel free to add to this, is that we do not know if there's an absence of drainage on the other 3 sides of the foundation as well, which is concerning. And we would have to get through quite a bit of concrete and infrastructure to be able to see if if there is an absence of drainage there. So it's going to be a pretty expensive change no matter what we would do.
So I know we've talked about this before, because we know it wasn't done on that side of the building. Who was, and I know it's been 10 years, but who was actually responsible for that? And, it just seems kind of dumb, because if we can't do anything about it, you just hate to think that whoever was responsible for it may be building somebody else a building, and nobody knows that they're not even competent to be able to do that. Or can they tell us that there's drain pipes on the other 3 sides?
So in this case, I do not have the exact contractor's name. That being said, I do know that for that drainage, MSD should have had an inspector out there. Based off the recollection of how that should have went down, I would assume that we would have had an MSD official out there to check that, especially being right adjacent to the rain garden. But Rick, I know you're more privy to the process there with MSD. After speaking with the Department of Planning, we would assume that they would have been out there.
Yeah, it's hard for me to know. I was not around at the time, as you know, that it was built. We did try to do some early on investigations in terms of what documentation is available from the construction of the building. And I know we did get some photographs. I have to go back and dive into that. I was just thinking that would be worth doing. But I don't know if that really provides us any better information, quite frankly. Because it's just hard to get good information. But I know early on when we started getting the leak, that was the direction we were really kind of headed, was more of forensics into the records that we had, determined if there was any clear lapses, and kind of hit a dead end, quite frankly, with that effort. At least that's my recollection. It's been a couple of years since we started doing that work, but we kind of ran into a dead end at the time.
I just think it's kind of sad, the amount of money that was spent and all of the people that we paid to do these different projects, to have to throw up your arms and say, well, it's just 10 years and they just didn't do it. So I don't know, it's just my personal, I don't know what to tell you to do, other than the fact that I just believe somehow, some way, we should be able to find out. And, there are still people around who were involved doing that. And I know that a couple of the council members a few years ago did a deep dive into the cost overruns, and they looked at a whole bunch of stuff. So maybe just asking a few people, we might have a little bit more direction. Or if it is an MSD thing, you would think that as a public system, they should have tracked exactly who did that inspection at that point too. So I'm just throwing out there, it just seems disappointing that we have a building like this, and this is the kind of stuff. We probably knew back then we'd only build one city hall. We just thought we were doing it the right way. And it's just kind of sad that we find all these things that may have been the greatest thing going, that just not really working as efficiently as we like. So just my 2 cents.
Yeah, I guess, Ed, if I can add, I mean, in some respects, I just want to move forward, but I forget what the term is, but there's, in all likelihood, whoever the contractor was, I mean, we have a lot of contracts. We probably had plans. The plans might have been bid. They might have been a contract pursuant to the plans. There could have been invoices. But if we go back to and find that something was not done right, I mean, like I know in my company, I had insurance that covered me when I made mistakes.
Yep.
And so if 10 years down the road, somebody comes back and says, you said there was going to be, hurricane rated truss brackets and you use screws. Well, they could still go back and, seek money from my insurance carrier. So I think it's worth the effort. Because I mean, regardless what term in the city, I think we always had contracts and there was probably plans. And now the other thing that true with respect to this is that, where there's concrete and all these issues, anything we can do to remove water away from the foundation of the building, we really need to consider, because again, I'll get back to my boring function. the rain garden, to me, the only benefit of that was to pour water on top of plastic soil. And even the fact that we don't have the perimeter drain, I wonder if we even have the proper excavation and then fill of rock to mitigate the fact it was plastic soil. So, but in any event, the first thing you do is you get water away from the building, and we're collecting it. I just, it's not logical. I mean, all of our homes, we simply want the water to flow away. We don't want it to come to it. So Thomas, on that, I don't know what we're doing now. Again, to me, I don't know what the purpose of those rain gardens were. I mean, I don't know if we're going to save the planet with them or something, but I believe it's contributing to the problem. So, and to me, a less costly path, if we get to this in the future, instead of tearing everything up in the front, it might be to, basically get water to drain away from those pits. I know I'm not using the right terms, but I'm not an expert in that. But I do think that a root of some of our settling issues and movement issues, I think it's plastic water exaggerated by the fact we're pouring water on it. So, all right, thank you.
And to respond to that, Mr. Brose, with your permission, Mr. Chair, is that our geotechnology has mentioned that they haven't seen many buildings like ours. I mean, the rain garden in the back was maybe not the best idea, because without that drainage, especially, it is water sitting right at the base. The one thing I would mention is that if we were to want to reconfigure that, it would be a pretty extensive process through MSD. And I know that originally the reason why we had that rain garden right up against the foundation in City Hall in general was because we were trying to be a LEED certified building. That being said, it definitely has caused most likely some damage. And I think the final results of the report will probably be helpful. We can look into the builders that actually were out there doing this. But I would say that if the one thing the department was thinking of, and it would also need MSD approval, would be, like you would mention, Mr. Brose, to get water away from it, maybe without having to dig out and create new rain gardens elsewhere. Maybe they're adding some type of sub pumps out down below, having something to drive the water away from the rain garden that is currently building up. So that would be maybe the first step, but I would imagine, and Rick, correct me if I'm wrong, that MSD would have a field day with us reconfiguring that back rain garden.
Well, we'd have to work through that with them, absolutely. When this first started, we had leaking in the women's bathroom, and that was kind of the first, indication we had a problem. And we at that time talked to a number of foundation repair companies, and they were saying, well, you probably need to start looking at interior drainage system, and it's sounded and I think we may have gotten some pricing on it at the time, and it was pretty extensive, but they were all basically in line with the best thing to do is try to address the water from the inside of the building. And so maybe that's what we'll end up with, is trying to go back down that path. I don't know.
Joe?
All right. So Tom, you want, this was, I guess, what I would suggest. I think we need to do, I'm happy to make a motion to give this company the extra time they need, because while I'd like to get it fixed, I also want to make sure that we're doing it right. And I think that gives us an opportunity in the meantime to do some research, because I think that we keep finding more and more that there were some pretty substantial mistakes that were made, either in the physical building of the building, or the planning of the building, or something along those lines. And so, as Larry said, there's going to be insurance or whatever. I mean, I don't know that we have any financial recourse, but I do think, as good stewards of, our citizens' money, we owe it to them to explain what is going on with the building, whether that's good, bad, or indifferent. And at the moment, it certainly doesn't seem like it's going to be anything other than bad, but we should tell them what's going on because, that is, I think to date, Rick or Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, the City Hall has to be in the top 5 most expensive things the city has ever done, I would assume. And, that seems like a pretty significant mismanagement of something. I don't know what it would be, but I think we need to do our work to try to figure out what's going on. And we also need to do our work to get the best information we can to fix it right the first time. So we don't have to keep coming back and doing these things. So if it's putting in French drains or an internal drainage system or ripping out the gardens or whatever it is, we have the unfortunate reality of owning the building. So we get to fix it. That's how it works.
It's not going to heal itself. So,
right. And as we talked about today, guys, it's only going to get worse. I mean, we had a conversation about erosion in other parts of the city, and City Hall is no different. I mean, the last rain, you guys got water in the building, not from underground, but from above ground, right? I mean, it was kind of getting flooded in there and stuff. So we got problems over there. We got to work through that. And we have 2 pretty large scale developments that want to put things over there, which is just going to exacerbate this problem. So we got to get this sorted out sooner rather than later. So I'll make the motion to give them the extra 6 months, which should get us a report back, in springtime, and then we can move forward accordingly, I would think. Is that what you need, Tom?
Yeah. In that case, with the other portion would need the motion, but yes, that it was, if there was no motion tonight, we were going to plan on having it in spring. But to do the additional research, we could have a motion to entertain that.
Yeah, I think we got to research. We got to do all the research, unfortunately. And so we can figure out, what we have to do right next, rather than fixing one thing and then figuring out, oh, I guess we should have done that 2 years ago.
I do remember when they were doing a lot of the original foundation digging, they were running into all kind of problems with the soil. And it had to come back several times to have the foundation area cleared out because it was the plastic soil that they were running into. So it's not, there should be a lot of records there. And 10 years is nothing when it comes to the amount of records to go through. But I just think that the combination of MSD and their inspections and what we've done, and then the review that we did on the cost associated, there's been a whole lot of stuff going through. And I think, unfortunately, as people leave and kind of walk away from it, it's just stuck there, and the building's going to be there for a long time. So anything that we can do, and Thomas, in that same motion that Joe made, we will get an update progress though, right? At the end of 6 months, we should see if they're finding anything.
They can provide us with an update as much as they can, what they have currently.
I think that was all part of the original plan as well. So we need a second then to Councilmember Farmer's motion. Councilmember Nyan seconds the motion. Any other discussion? Tracy, did you want to say anything? All good? Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion passes. With the recommendation to move forward, Mr. Lee.
Thank you. In this case, I wanted to note one last thing, Chair. Did we, I know Stat was on here and I think they just hopped off, but the original motion with the leak repair, that was also approving to go to council, the masonry work being carried out by Stat, correct?
I thought it was.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Just making sure. So in that case, no further comment then.
Is that it for your list tonight?
That is it for tonight, Chair.
And I'm sure that we'll get to it, but do you think there'll be any chance we can look at the lattice work on the side of the building before the park is opened?
You said the lattice?
The lattice work that's up on the top of the side of the building, driving up into the parking lot. It looks to me like it's rotten and ready to fall off. So the next thing we're going is talking about, boy, let's get a big, exciting event going over at the park, and everybody's going to say, what happened to City Hall 10 years ago? So is that another contractor, or is that something maybe it could be painted, but it definitely needs something. And I know it's
That
not
wouldn't almost like
structural, and I
the,
know it's not the other.
that lattice we could go ahead and go out with a contractor to see what it would cost to at least paint it and add some type of adhesive that maybe makes it look a little better. Or we could look at replacing it. Either way, we could definitely go out and get those
How about
options.
just
for it.
removing it? I mean, it's
Removing
just-
it as well.
Yeah.
That is,
we could all go look at it really hard and it'll probably fall off.
Yeah, yeah, it's only gonna get bad again, so even if you use a non-rotting material, it's gonna warp and like, I think we had, there wasn't enough control on the ooh-ah on the building versus just, again, focusing on the function. And again, look at where that wall faced. Nowhere. Why spend money? You have a money view, and then you've got the rest of the building. And but yeah, that's in bad shape. I would say, remove and fix the wall if it's the proper timing, because we also got to address, the other issues that, we don't want to fix it and then have another issue with that, with something happening on that wall. But yeah, that, and I would go toward all that metal in the front of the building. I'd rip it out and throw it away. It's only going to cost money. And 95% of the people, or 100% of our residents, don't even know it's there. It's only the people that probably work at the city hall and look at it, but that's just another expense that we don't need to take care of. And it might need to come out anyway to address the water issue.
Yeah. So Thomas, do you need anything more other than you could get a proposal back for us to get it out of there? I think other than just having somebody come and tear it out, we ought to make sure it doesn't structurally do any. It'd probably be the only part that's connected to the water discharge. I have no idea.
No.
No.
okay, hold on. I had misinterpreted. So when you said lattice, you're talking about that on the south side of the building that has, it's almost like where the vines used to go up for the city hall when it was first built.
Did we ever
South
have
or
vines up there?
There's lattice on the east and west sides of the building that are just like, it's old and
The
shitty.
thought was that, and sorry, I misinterpreted there. It was that wooden component on the far western side of the building that it was that like, cross-hatched.
Correct.
Okay, so it's that. Okay, so I was thinking that on the back end of the building, the south side, towards the parking lot, there is that section that's it's a metal tubing, if you will, that has a very important role to play in our guttering. So I just wanted to make sure it wasn't that component. But if it's just that wooden piece on the side, the west side and east side of the building, that most likely will fall well within.
Kind of gives it the appearance that it's a chicken coop.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I do think, Tom, I mean, since it's probably going to be, I imagine, a similar contractor doing it, I would like to see the price to just get some of that stuff, as Larry said, off the front, whether we need to take it off or not. My guess is at some point we're going to have to do something, so we might as well get some numbers so we can know what that is.
Now, are the gutters all flowing into these water traps?
Yes. So in the back end of the building, they are flowing directly into the rain garden.
And we would need MSD approval to put in a little flex pipe and direct it somewhere else. So I would say, as a temporary measure, maybe we like process of elimination, but maybe if we reduce the amount of water coming in to our building, I don't know if there's a way to redirect it for a trial and error type basis, because that's a ton of water going. I mean, I think we might as well take a gun and just shoot ourselves in the foot, because that's what we're doing. But
Yeah.
I would say maybe there's a way to, do an experiment and see if we, of course, you don't want too many variables when you're trying to research problems. So maybe the geotech people have, because they're testing variables too. But I mean, how many of us are going to take water and pour it down on the side of our foundation? I mean, it's just not logical. So, but it probably worked on paper. So, all right, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? So you actually have some direction as to what we're looking for. You don't need a motion for that, do you?
No, in this case, that it just for getting a proposal to remove that wooden cross-hatched section, that's not necessary.
Good. Anything else?
Well, I'd just like to add on a positive note, I do think we're making progress. I mean, it's not fun, but I do think we're making progress.
Painful.
I would agree with that, Mr. Brost.
Okay. Do we want to pick a meeting for the next future date, or do you want to come back to us with a couple options, Mr. Lee?
In this case, Chair, just based off, I would like to probably get just a quick proposal. I'd say the next time we'd meet, we would get a proposal together. These two proposals for the leak repair is going to go straight to council as soon as possible. As long as we get the agreements, we should be able to go in September. But getting a proposal for the removal of the lattice on the west and east side of the building, that would, after we get that proposal, we could come back and meet to discuss what we want to do there. And at that time, we should have some type of preliminary report from Geotechnology as well.
Okay, so we'll leave it with a date to be determined.
I'm wondering if we could say a date to be determined, but not later than a certain date, just to, like, if it's very comfortable to say no later than October 31st or something, just so we don't end up having 3 or 4 months go by and
October 31st would be
Yeah,
fine.
because they did the first testing in April. That'd be 6 months. So if that, I think that would be great. October 31st, does that work, Thomas, for you?
That should work just fine, at least for if Geotech needs more time, they can get us whatever they have at that point.
Yeah. like no later than.
No later than, yeah, that's perfect.
So, all right, thank you.
That could give them almost 7 months then. The end of that. Anything else? All right, we just need a motion to adjourn. Councilman Farmer, second by Councilman Brost. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Pretty quiet. All right, we are adjourned. Thank you
All right,
all so
thank
much.
you.
Thanks,
Bye,
Thomas.
guys.